So at this point, I want to introduce Lucy Steinitz. Lucy is a very international person. She's worked for the Catholic Relief Services for a number of years, including many places in Africa. And outside of her work, she's also traveled around the world. So in her travels, she has seen many things and looked up Steinitz, and you'll see that one of the products that she found was this great Casa Museum in Quito. So Lucy, please take over.
Thank you, Jerry, and it's really wonderful to see so many people here. That's absolutely fantastic. Let me remind, please, our other speakers to unmute yourselves. You're the only people who can do it, but you have to do it. So please unmute yourself at the bottom bar. And I'm going to tell you a little bit how I came across all of this. So 35 years ago, my husband and I were traveling to Quito, Ecuador, en route to the Galapagos and other wonderful things in that country. And we had a custom in those days, these were the days of telephone books, that wherever we would go, we would look in the telephone book. This was actually my father's custom before us. And we would see how many kika bushes there were, my husband's name, and how many Steinitzes there were, which was my name and my father's. Now, my father was named Hans Steinitz. Hans is pretty common for Holocaust, well, in Germany, and he was also a Holocaust survivor. But he had come to the US, and you can just imagine this, there were no kika bushes. There's never any kika bushes. But I opened up the telephone book, and not only was there a Steinitz, there was a Hans Steinitz, and I was blown away. So we mustered the best Spanish that we could put together, and I called that number from the hotel and asked in Spanish, do you speak English, French, or German? And the answer from Hans Steinitz was all three. So at that point, we were introduced ourselves and we were invited over to their home in the afternoon. And it was for tea. Hans and his wife, Trude Sojka, gave us a wonderful Kaffee and Kuchen, German's European style tea, and we met the family. That was well before the museum, but we stayed in touch, and I returned to the museum and to Anita and her family several times, and have become totally enamored by what they are doing. I think you'll feel the same. So that's how it all began. We believe we are cousins, but hundreds of years ago, when the Jews were required to take surnames by the Prussian government, we can trace our origins and Anita, her origins, back to the same village. There were two Steinitzes, but with different first names. We suspect they were brothers. And so distant relatives. There are others on this call. We've joined Steinitz reunions several times, and it has just been a wonderful family friendship of choice. I'm going to focus, however, on this endeavor in Ecuador, which I think you'll find amazing. And so Anita and Gaby, please do unmute yourself, because otherwise we will not be able to hear you. Introduce yourselves, great, and then the video. We have some other speakers. You're going to be hearing from a colleague of mine, Kaskazi. I'll introduce her later. She has also a very unique perspective from Rwanda on this experience. But first, Anita and Gaby.
Well, hello to everybody. I'm really very, very happy to be here today. And thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Mindy. Thank you so much, Lucy, for inviting us. To begin, we're going to present you our video, which is a visual tour about the Trude Sojka House Museum. But first, Gaby will present herself, and Miriam, my sister.
So, hello, I am Gaby. And yes, Miriam, you can unmute yours.
Hello, I'm Miriam.
Okay.
So, yeah, so you show this.
So Jerry, you're going to show the video now?
Yes, please.
So I'm sharing the screen.
No, Jerry's going to do this, I think,
Okay.
I hope.
Not one.
And we welcome you to the Trude Sojka House, the home of
Yes.
Steinitz and his wife, and now the museum Casa Cultural Trude Sojka. And we have sound.
Can you hear?
Welcome to the Trude Sojka House Museum. My name is Anita Steinitz. I am director of this museum. I'm also the daughter of Trude Sojka, a Jewish artist and Holocaust survivor.
Hello, I am Gabriela Steinitz. I am the granddaughter of Trude Sojka, and welcome to this house.
The Trude Sojka House Museum is located in Quito, Ecuador. Ecuador is a beautiful country on the equator on the west coast of South America. This country is very diverse. It has the Galapagos Islands and the Amazon jungle and beautiful beaches in the coastal region, and also the Andean highlands. And its capital is Quito. Quito is a colonial city. It was declared by UNESCO World Heritage Site. Actually, it was the first city ever to have this title. And in the northern part of Quito, there is a neighborhood, La Floresta, where a lot of Jewish people came and settled after their arrival from Europe. The Jewish community in Ecuador is today very small. Actually, maybe 600 people, but it used to be much larger. A lot of immigrants came during the rise of Hitler and Nazism, and also the Holocaust. They were businessmen, and a lot of them in the arts and sciences and medical doctors. And they helped develop this small country. And one of the families, Jewish families that came to this neighborhood, La Floresta, were Hans and Trude, my parents. In 2007, we opened to the public the Trude Sojka House Museum. Since then, we strive to keep alive Trude Sojka's memory and her art with the aim to contribute to the building of world peace. Perhaps the most important thing for us has been this change from the Trude Sojka Cultural House to the Trude Sojka House Museum.
Trude Sojka was born in 1909 in Berlin. Both of her parents were Czech and Jewish, and she grew up in a very wealthy family. So this is her father, Rudolf, and her mother, Hedvika. They moved to Prague when she was a child. And when she finished high school, she went to the Berlin Academy of Fine Arts. So this is her when she was young. And in 1938, she married Desideri Schwarz. So this is the day of their marriage. Trude Sojka and her husband, during the Holocaust, probably they hid, but we are not sure about it because Trude Sojka never told us. What we know is that in 1944, they went to the country, they were deported, and Trude lost her husband in Auschwitz. She was in 4 different concentration camps, and probably the most difficult thing she experienced is the loss of her baby, her first child. She was liberated on May 11, 1945. The baby died a couple of weeks after that. Then she went back to Czechoslovakia to try to find her family, but she found nobody. And the only thing she found is actually a little note coming from her brother who was living in Ecuador. So immediately she decided that she had to join him. And in 1946, she began the trip to this country. So she came to Ecuador, and after 3 months of navigating through the ocean, she met her brother, the only remaining member of her family in Guayaquil. So this is her brother, Walter Sojka. In Ecuador, she also met a very good friend of Walter, Hans Steinitz, another Holocaust survivor. And well, 2 years later, in 1948, they got married and they built their family. So they had 3 daughters. The youngest one is my mother, Anita. And they came to Quito. They were first living in Guayaquil, and here they built this house. And here she made her own atelier, her studio, and dedicated the rest of her whole life to art. So this is her when she was a little bit older. She made exhibits in other countries, in the United States, in France. I think at the end of her life, she was very happy, and she could maybe not overcome the whole experience she had during the Holocaust, but her art helped her a lot.
The Trude Sojka House Museum has several permanent exhibits, like this one here, Expressionism, Dancing Colors. And in this room, we find this painting, Acrobacy, with several acrobats that are united by a single line, like a thread. Okay, here we have another permanent exhibit by Trude Sojka, which is called Fulfillment and Tenderness, The Circle Closes. These are artworks that Trude Sojka did at the end almost of her life.
So we are at the exhibit No One's Imprints, that is based on the poetry of Paul Celan, a Jewish Holocaust survivor artist. And these are my artworks that I've made as a way to try to find my identity again in my roots, and as well as to search a little bit this past that my grandparents never told me. Speaking about memory, we are here in a secret room that my grandparents built in case something happened, something similar to the Holocaust, and they could hide here. And since this is a museum now, we have exhibited pictures from different archives about the Holocaust. And we've put also some sculptures made by my grandmother that remind us of these times, difficult times. But there is a phrase in the center of the room by Anne Frank that says, "In spite of all, I still believe in the inner good of mankind." Here we are at the library of the museum. We have more than 2,000 books in almost all languages, and they are mostly about art, Holocaust, genocides, and Jewish history in general.
This room is devoted to Hans Steinitz, who was my father and also Trude Sojka's husband. Hans Steinitz was born in 1908, and he studied to become a lawyer but could not finish his studies because of the war. In 1938, during Kristallnacht, he was arrested and taken to the concentration camp of Sachsenhausen, not far away from Berlin. He was very lucky though, because José Ignacio Burbano, who was at that time consul of Ecuador in Bremen, gave him a visa to come to this country, to Ecuador. He traveled in the beginning of 1939 to Guayaquil, and here in Ecuador, he became a businessman. José Ignacio Burbano saved the life of other Jewish people in Ecuador, and right now he is in the process of becoming a righteous among the nations. And he's not the only one. In Ecuador, there is another righteous among the nations whose name is Manuel Antonio Muñoz Borrero. He was consul of Ecuador in Stockholm, and he saved the life of more than 260 Jews by giving them false passports. This is why this room is also devoted to the righteous among the nations. This room is devoted to the victims of different genocides. We have to bear in mind that the Holocaust, of course, was a genocide, but unfortunately in this world, it is not the only one. There are many, many genocides in this world. So we created an installation symbolically inside this garderobe, the clothes of different victims of genocides. You have the Armenian genocide, the Christian genocide by the Nazis, Cambodia genocide, Guatemala genocide, and the genocide of the Tutsis by the Hutus.
The Trude Sojka House Museum is a space, a lab, where we invite the community to reflect and discuss with us about different social issues.
And in this house museum, we tell the story of Trude Sojka and all our family. And we would like you to identify with our stories. We really want to create empathy, because if there is empathy, there is no fear, there is no hate. And this is the beginning for the construction of peace.
So join us. We hope one day you will come here and visit this house. And before you leave, we would like you to see our last showroom, which is the sculpture garden.
Thank you so much for showing that video. It was made specially for this program, but we hope we'll be able to use it in many other settings as well. Anita will talk a little bit more about the Jewish community of Ecuador in order to give some context. But I want to say welcome again. We have over 70 participants, and this is fantastic. So Gaby, Anita, and then Miriam, thank you so much for introducing us to your family and to the museum that you have worked so hard to build as a peace study center among its many other purposes.
Yes, thank you, Lucy. And as we saw on our video, the story of my parents, Hans Steinitz and Trude Sojka, is an example of how migrants came to Ecuador and settled in this country. And as you said, I want to talk a little more about the Jewish community in Ecuador using the information that Daniel Lest, who is the president of the Jewish community and who is here with us today, kindly sent to me. So the Jewish community in Ecuador is small. It's one of the smallest in South America, with only 180 members who together with their families add up to about 480 people actually. It was founded in 1938 with the aim to help Jews who came to Ecuador fleeing Nazism, mostly from Central Europe. In the 70s, other Jews came from Argentina and Chile, fleeing from dictatorships. And since then, there has been almost no Jewish immigration. And this is why the community has decreased in numbers. Also because young university students have been leaving the countries to study abroad. In general, they do not return to their native country, and most of them settle in the United States, in Israel, or in Canada. Despite the fact that the Jewish community of Quito is small, it is very dynamic. In the year 2000, it inaugurated its new beautiful headquarters where many activities, programs such as the Talmud Torah for children or the Hanuar Hatzioni Zionist youth movement and various religious celebrations take place, bringing together Jews of different religious currents. Especially during the last 14 months of the pandemic, supported by technology, it has multiplied its activities. The Jewish community of Ecuador has its own funerary service and cemetery, and most important, it established in 1973 a Jewish school in Quito, the Albert Einstein School, which serves both Jewish and non-Jewish students and is perhaps the best school in the country. As part of the school, there is a Holocaust documentation center called Manuel Antonio Muñoz Borrero, with which our house museum, the Trude Sojka House Museum, has often worked together. But what about former years? In former years, the Ecuadorian Jewish community used to be much larger. The history of the Jews in Ecuador dates back to the 16th and 17th century, when Sephardic Jews began arriving from Spain and Portugal because of the Spanish Inquisition. Their presence remained hidden for years, as they often established themselves in remote villages and practiced Judaism in secret at home. Mass Jewish immigration to Ecuador only began in the wake of the rise of Nazism and the subsequent Holocaust in Europe. During the years 1933 to 1943, about 2,700 Jews arrived, and by 1945-1950, there were close to 5,000 Jewish immigrants, most of whom were refugees from Germany, Austria, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Poland, Romania, and Italy. Since their arrival in Ecuador, the Jews have made very important contributions to the scientific, educational, artistic,
cultural, intellectual, and economic development of the country, achieving prominence in various fields, including academics, medicine, journalism, law, arts and science, communications, business, construction, industry. When my mother, Trude, and her husband, Hans, settled in Quito, they immediately became members of the Jewish community in Ecuador. And now, my daughter Gaby and I are, of course, members. And at the same time, we are close to the Ecuadorian society. But in fact, as a museum, we wish to build up our cooperation together with the Jewish community. We would especially aspire to increase our collection of documents and testimonies from Ecuadorian Jewish Holocaust survivors or refugees and their descendants. In that respect, we are also at present in contact with the Holocaust Museum in Washington, seeing the possibility of exchanging archives with them. Thank you.
Okay, so yes, you see, I think Jewish people really had a huge contribution to the country, and on our side, Trude Sojka had this contribution in the art field. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about. So I'm going to present you 4 artworks that have the theme of Holocaust and how Trude Sojka felt Jewish. Well, a little bit of context. My grandmother told us that her family was very assimilated. That means, as many Jews in Europe, they felt more Czech. Well, she felt more Czech, and my grandfather felt more German than Jewish sometimes. And they did not understand why the Nazis would aim to them, because they were good Germans and good Czechs, and they didn't understand that anti-Semitism. But I think my grandmother felt a stronger connection with anti-Semitism a stronger connection with Jewishness when she after she experienced the Holocaust, and she expressed that in her paintings. So first of all, this is an artwork. As you saw in the video, she has a very original technique. This is cement and acrylics and over a wooden surface. It's I think not many artists have this technique, especially here in Ecuador. It has an expressionist style. And I would love to hear from you also in the comments. You can write what you if you like it or dislike it. You can also dislike it. If you like what you see in the paintings, any comments, any impressions, feel free to write. And meanwhile, I will continue talking. So this painting is called Liberation, and it's about perhaps the last day in the concentration camp. My grandmother was at the Sidwerke Kleinschuna concentration camp. It's a almost unknown camp in Poland, and she was liberated there. And she expressed here the feelings of the people. Sometimes they were not so happy about the liberation. They were completely disoriented. But other people were helping others, and I think, well, there's, they were separated, women and men. So here you can rather see women, how they felt. And it's interesting how there is a progression, right? It's like a pyramid. It goes up, so it cannot go worse. That's what she wants to express. After the liberation, it has to get better. Here's another painting. It's called The Prophet, and it's Elijah, right? Elijah, sorry, the prophet Elijah. It has a lot of influence from from one Jewish painter that my grandmother loved, Marc Chagall. He was Russian, and it's I think a very spiritual painting. She used to tell, especially my mom, how during the concentration camps she felt she needed to believe that there was hope, and she needed to believe someone was protecting her, and she took as this protective character this prophet Elijah. And yes, he represented her, and it's interesting because there is another hidden face. Trude Sojka loved to play with the viewer in her paintings, putting lots of details and sometimes hide faces. So this is a woman's face, and maybe it's her, and it's very different to see an image than to see it real, because it has texture, it has relief. Then this is the synagogue. It was a painting. Well, I'm sorry I didn't say the dates, but it's about the same date. I think this is 1952. So it's only a few years after she arrived to Ecuador, and this is already 1977. This is called Prayer at the Synagogue, and there's as you can see, a central character. And of course, it could be her. As always, we say that in paintings, usually artists represent themselves. But as he's in black, or she is in black, it could be anybody. So and I think, yes, of course, it's a synagogue, but I think it also represents how one can connect with spirituality in general, and also. At the background, you see this golden gate, and it's hope again. In her paintings, she always represents hope, and it's a very geometrical painting, different to the other ones, as you could see. Well, here's the progression. You can see how she transforms her style through the years. And finally, this is the prayer. This is the prayer. This is the prayer, and you saw in the video. It's in fact we adapted it. My grandmother wanted it to be this way, as a flame, an eternal flame. We light it in honor to all victims of genocide, and that was the purpose of my grandmother. There is now a little explanation here. It's not visible in the photo, but it explains how my grandmother was very concerned about the different problems in the world that happened throughout the years after the Holocaust. She saw the wars, the Vietnam War in Algeria, and well, so many conflicts in the world, and she didn't understand how it would be possible that it continued after this terrible experience. So she made this sculpture in honor of all the victims of all genocides and all crimes against humanity. And it's in the garden, so it's also a place that people that pass by can see it. And so Lucy, as you saw in the video, Lucy told at the beginning, I'm also an artist, and in the video I also mentioned it. So right now I have an exhibit. I studied in France and in the Czech Republic, art, and I always had this, I was looking for something always in my artworks, and I was looking for my real identity, because I felt this empty that my grandparents left me, because they never really talked to me about their story or what they felt about what happened during these times. And I wanted to explore that, and I traveled in Europe, and I went to the archives and tried to find the names, and I didn't find that much. I still have a lot of work to do in that side research, but I expressed it in my paint. Well, I have many. I use different techniques. Here is an engraving, for example, it's very, let's say, conceptual art. Has very different meanings. For example, here is the imprints. I try to explore what the fingerprints mean in a metaphoric way. Like, is identity only expressed by what we look like, or what we feel like, or what our ancestors were? And this is tejido, like a net of apple seeds, an infinite net of apple that, of course, express the origin. So yes, a little bit of my artwork, but so much. No, this is not mine. But yes, so let's keep talking about art with, but about my grandmother's art, about Trude Sojka. Miriam will tell us about what Trude Sojka made outside of Ecuador, all the exhibits she made there. So please go on.
First of all, thank you, Anita. Thank you, Gaby. And it's so inspiring to see your art, which I know is vast and amazing. And I'm sure your grandparents are looking down and smiling and hugging you from above. You're fantastic.
Thank you.
It's great to be related to you, however we are. So, Miriam is next. You're a little behind schedule, though. I just have to mention that. Miriam?
Okay, can you hear me? So I'm going to share my screen, and my presentation is very, very short. Basically, I want to tell you about the international acclaim that my mother had. Basically, she had exhibits in Florida, in Pennsylvania, here in Ohio, in France, in the Czech Republic, and some of her paintings that were in the United States are in private collections. There's a book cover with her painting and a book by Rodrigo Villasis Molina about her. So in Pensacola, Florida, when my sister Eva, my older sister, was there, she had exhibits in 1977 and 1978. In France, Anita was living in France in 81, 82. She was my mother's artwork as part of a collective exhibit, 2 paintings and I think 1 sculpture in 81 and 82. In Cincinnati, we had a single person exhibit here, and it was quite successful. I live in Cincinnati. And I think the most impressive and fantastic exhibit was quite recent in 2019, when Gaby took many, many paintings out to the Teresín Memorial Museum in the Czech Republic. And I know that was very, very successful. And I know she can tell you how many people attended, quite a lot. This is the cover of a book by California poet Gordon Bailakis, Yvonne Gordon Bailakis, and uses one of my mother's artworks. And here is the book. The book was published in 1999, and the author, Rodrigo Villasis Molina, is one of the most recognized art critics in Ecuador. But he didn't just show her art, although the book is an art book. Las dos vidas de Trude Sojka, or the 2 lives of Trude Sojka, talks about basically her biography. And at that time, this was when my mother turned 90 years old, and she was named Ecuador's Artist Emeritus. So basically, that's all I wanted to present.
Thank you for that. And there are comments that are suggesting the hope, the prayer that some of this artwork could be brought to the U.S. Holocaust Museum as well. I know there's discussions around the archives, but if any of you have any connections for any of the major memorial museums or other museums in the U.S., I know that would be welcome also. But I want to turn to one other aspect that's so critical in what happens with this museum. And each time I have visited, I've seen that component get stronger. It is the peace education aspect to ensure that Ecuadorian children, adults, and visitors understand what is meant by never again. Although it seems the world has failed several times, as Paskazi Musambia Mungu will tell us from her experience as a Rwandan who lived through the genocide in her country very tragically, and who visited with me and a group of other colleagues a number of years ago. We weren't sure what the sound quality would be like from Rwanda, so we have a video, but Paskazi is here and able to answer questions afterwards. So Jerry, if you could put on Paskazi's video, and Paskazi, if you could wave, I know you're on the front screen, so hopefully people can see you. A dear colleague and friend of mine.
My name is Hello everyone. Thank you for making this morning. My name is Paskazi Musabyamungu. I've been working with Catholic Relief Services in Rwanda for more than 10 years on various responsibilities. Currently, I work as partnership and peace building manager. Over the past 6 years, I've been managing a women peace building cross-border project that enhanced my experience in peace building and social cohesion. When I visited the Trude Sojka House Museum in Ecuador with Lucy and the other CRS colleagues in 2015, I was very moved. I had lived through the horrors of the 1994 genocide committed against the Tutsi in Rwanda. And there, far away in Ecuador, were people who experienced the same sad experience. I was so impressed by the commitment to peace education that this family is continuing to make. This kind of peace education to young people and to others who have had no personal association with genocide is our only hope for true peace, reconciliation, and social cohesion in this world. On the one hand, I was fascinated by the way that Trude Sojka coped with her personal loss and trauma through art. This was a therapy to her, but beautiful for the rest of us to see. On the other hand, this visit made me very sad. I could see firsthand how terrible the Holocaust was, with worldwide impact, affecting many people across the world. It was terrifying, but also struck me is that it happened a generation earlier. This hurt my heart as I realized that the world had never learned from the Holocaust. We all have so much responsibility and more work to do with building a just world, aiming at a peaceful cohabitation between next generations.
Paskazi, you are worth waiting for. Thank you, Gaby, for your technical skills as well. I love you. I love you all. I think Anita and Gaby, just very briefly about the effect of the pandemic on your efforts in the last year. And then we'll repeat the main mission of the museum and go to questions. Many thanks to everybody for being here.
Briefly, my mom will talk to you about the work we've been doing, the peace educations. And so I'm going to share with you a couple of pictures.
Hey, I wanted just to say that since we opened the Trude Sojka, which was the Trude Sojka Cultural House, we have organized a lot of activities like temporary exhibits by various painters, photographers, and other artists, a cinema club, a book club, concerts, lectures, talks, book presentations, and various workshops and classes on visual arts, music, dance, literature, human development. Many have been partnered with the Czech or the Israeli embassies. And we have also had students coming to visit us from Germany or the United States to learn more about Ecuador and the Holocaust. My sister Miriam brought several groups of students from her university, NKU, and in 2010, 15 students from the university, from this same university, NKU, led by Nancy Corsell, came to the country to gain experience about Jewish institutions, but also to learn about the history and the culture of the Afro-Ecuadorian descendants of diaspora in the community of Mascarilla, which is in the northern part of Ecuador. However, I think that our main activity at the Cultural House was always the peace education workshops. They were mainly offered to students in the last years of secondary schools to reinforce their study on World War II. Also, entire families participated in some others, and disabled people, such as several groups of deaf individuals who were able to express their thoughts, their needs, their dreams, even their frustrations through art. Like here, you have a group of them. The workshops are based, of course, on the life experience and the artistic work of Trude Sojka and her power of resilience. In general, they last one morning from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And they have been endorsed by the Ministry of Culture and the New York Claims Conference organization. In a world where prejudice and intolerance are globally spreading, as you know, our workshops have definitely helped to counteract anti-Semitism by including individuals and groups from various creeds and cultures, and not only Jewish people. And they have all been able to use art as a means of universal expression. And the two small rooms we saw on the video that have been of great aid in these workshops have allowed us to create, organize, let's say, several amusing and didactic activities, like the secret room that you saw, which evokes in a way the secret annex in Anne Frank's house, and the small room dedicated to the memory of other genocides, which reminds us of the victims of genocides perpetrated throughout history, such as Armenia, Cambodia, Guatemala, or Rwanda. These two rooms were open to the public thanks to the ideas and also to the financial help of Lucy Steinitz, who has, I want to thank her again, she has been advising us and backing us since we started our project in 2009. So that's about very, very quickly our activities at the Cultural House.
And so our last activity was, for the International Museums Day, we made virtual tours with other two museums in partnership. And during the 18th of May on Museums Day, we shared a little bit the story of the house to high school children from a very small town far away from Quito, Conocoto, and it was very, very nice. And this is like our new beginning as a house museum. And we have many projects for the future. I want to make cooking workshops and we have a garden here, as you saw. I want to make
I don't know, ecological
cultivate like edible vegetables, things like that, and make new exhibits. Well, we have lots of projects, and so yeah, that's. But yes, we need to start again, rethinking everything a little bit. So, yeah, right now we have currently a problem. It's the roof is not in good shape, and we will need some help for that. But
okay, so I just want to conclude with our main mission here at the Trude Sojka Cultural Museum, House Museum. We aim to promote an intercultural society and peace in the world, bearing in mind that racism, anti-Semitism, and prejudice are not over. And therefore, awareness about the Shoah is extremely important, especially for newer generations. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And I want to thank all the speakers. You absolutely blow me away every time I hear and see more about what you're doing. Please, I'm going to just share one more slide as I open this up for questions. And just to let you know that you have the possibility to find out more information and to make a donation. We will put this up later, and you'll get this in follow-up email as well. That's not why we're happy you're here. We're happy you're here just because you are. But if anyone is so moved, you could see there's great needs and support. Anita, Gaby, and Miriam are all volunteers in what they do. And this is extraordinary, extraordinary work. Could you begin by answering the questions of why did Trude Sojka use cement and other low-cost materials? I think it feeds right into the garden that you want to create, Gaby, and the ecological aspects. So if you could, please answer that question.
Okay, I'm going to answer it. First of all, I think that my mother, she wanted, you know, when she built our house with my father, both of them did it using a lot of different materials, but a lot of it was cement. And my mother was looking, she was before everything a sculptor. She was looking for a material that she wouldn't need to burn, because she had bought herself for her sculptures an oven, an electrical oven, and there was no electricity very often in our neighborhood. So all her sculptures were broken. So she started to experiment with cement, with Portland cement. And my uncle, Walter, who was a chemist, he helped her to, with a new chemical material, vinyl acrylic, I don't know exactly the name, but that helped with, you know, so that the cement would not crack. And that's, I think, a way how my mother solved one of her problems of sculptures. And then she started doing it also with paintings. She did sculptures that were at the same time, sculptures and paintings at the same time. That's one of the reasons, but there's another reason. I think that my mother, who at the concentration camps had been surrounded by cement and ugliness, she thought maybe I can do something to help this horrible material become beautiful, to make it talk. And that's what she did. And you can see how beautiful, how colorful her cement becomes in the hands of my mother. So I think those are some of the reasons. I don't know if you have something else to say.
No, that's basically the main thing.
Now, I remember hearing one other reason when I asked that question, which is that she was so ecologically minded and used rubbish and waste materials.
Oh, that's the other part of the question.
All right, that's another reason.
Is that she used, of course, the Portland cement, but she recycled materials.
Especially for sculptures.
She used, you know, old scrap metal and pieces of glass and shells, I don't know, whatever. And I think that's what you say, that was true. She used things because she didn't want to throw anything away. And I think Gaby is the same.
So I think we can learn an awful lot from that. Let me turn to Paskazi if you want to now say something directly to us. I know you've got friends and family here as well, from Rwanda and perhaps elsewhere, I see. So that's great, Paskazi. You're a dear friend, and now I think everyone can understand why. You're just an amazing person too.
Hello, everyone. I'm speechless, right? Because 5 years ago, when I met Lucy at this museum, I was impressed in one hand, but also your loving memories I found there took me back to Rwanda, because you went through the same sad history. And although you've been hurt, you are trying to educate us, to educate everyone, to remind everyone that peace matters. Peace matters because we are one people of God. We are one humanity. And you are there just to remind us that we have to make peace a lifestyle, because without peace, life is at risk, and no one will gain on committing genocide or any crime against humanity. There is no gain at all. I think looking at how she's teaching us through art how to heal, also how to bring others understand. I think this is also something to admire through visiting your museum, and also through learning from your history. And I feel I'm glad to have been closer to Lucy, my friend. And till now, we are still in touch. We're still sharing everything. And now I'm honored to be with you, to listen and to celebrate your loving memories together with you, along with my friends who are on this platform. Thank you for this moment. It's an unforgettable one. Keep up the good work you are doing. Peace education is matter.
Thank you, Paskazi. There's a number of questions about how your peace education work is funded. I know you're essentially volunteers, but tell us what sources of funding you have and how you do that work.
Okay, we actually had some funding from Claims Conference in New York, and also the Ministry of Culture here in Ecuador gave us some funding, but the funding was always very little. In total, we got $15,000 in our 12 years of work. So really, it's very small. So the funding is from the family, actually, not more. And we are doing all our work voluntarily. Yeah.
And the roof is falling down.
Right.
Which is a big problem. Yes. There are other questions that I think we can be open. We answered your other questions. Current anti-Semitism, do you experience in Ecuador? That question has not been addressed.
Well, there is anti-Semitism in Quito. There is a quite hidden movement of neo-Nazis here. And it's of course very worrying for us. I think it's not it has nothing to do with what is happening, for example, in the United States or in Europe, but there are many people that I believe they don't really know what Jewish people are, what it means to be Jewish, and they confuse the conflicts with Israel, with what happened during the Holocaust, and they have this idea that Jewish people are going to dominate the world, and all the cliches we hear all the time, and that they are killing all the Palestinians because they are doing the same, they're taking revenge or things like that. And it's very unfortunate. It's very it's very worrying, but it's also very frequent to hear that from people. And we have received visitors here that say that tell to us, I am a Holocaust denier. I don't believe this happened, and I'm coming here to just to prove myself that it's not true. and like attacks, anti-Semitic attacks, I personally have never really experienced here in Quito, in Ecuador. In France, it's another thing. It's terrible too. And also Holocaust deniers and people that don't understand. What I said, don't understand the magnitude of what Holocaust means. They say, "Oh, Holocaust was perhaps just a conflict, but not as important as what happened here in Ecuador." They don't understand that what we are trying to say is not everybody should be crying because the Holocaust happened. We're trying to make it, to go beyond that, and that is sad when we can't fulfill our objectives, but we try to.
There's a lot of work that's still to be done. The question arose from Mindy to Paskazi, how the genocide in Rwanda is memorialized. I know a lot, and if it also makes references to other genocides, so that sadly we know that the challenge is worldwide and we have to work together worldwide.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mindy. I think we don't have only one museum. We have museums across the country. In Kigali, we have the main museum, and it brings a lot of forces that led to the genocide and how it has been evolved to get there. And now the government is bringing has been bringing perpetrators and survivors together years ago. And now we are at a very good rate of reconciliation, so that you may see families from perpetrators and survivors working hand in hand in a cooperative or on a business to develop together, right? Because they were able to journey together by allowing perpetrators to repent, to ask for forgiveness, but also accompanying the survivors to understand and to forgive. So I feel the very big experience that Rwanda has is that a special journey between perpetrators and survivors, although it was hard, but we made it. And I think it's easy to say, it's hard to do, but it's possible. And they showed that it's possible because of enabling environment, enabling leadership. I'm highlighting leadership because without enabling leadership, the process of healing and reconciliation would have been possible. So I think in brief, that's how I can respond to that question. And also highlighting that at every district in a country, we have a memorial, and that memorial serves is an instrument of a peace education, because every year we have commemoration event of the 1994 genocide committed against the Tutsi, where people come together to commemorate, to remember together, and say never again.
Thank you, Paskazi. We need to learn from Rwanda's example in this. You've been very successful. I want to thank everybody from the Ecuadorian Jewish community who joined and helped prepare this presentation. I want to thank the Steinitz family worldwide. We had quite a lot of participation. Paskazi, you and your family, Mindy Reiser and Jerry Garfinkel for putting this together. Are there any other questions that people have?
I have seen in the comments a couple of questions. For example, how many paintings and sculptures do you have in your collection? We have around 300. Yes, paintings and sculptures.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? I'm going to share my screen one more time, but that means I can't see you.
Okay, I think. Please tell peace education work. Okay, that's what kind of programs are held? What audiences do you engage? I think you could answer that.
Well, we have, a general public that's a lot of students, a lot of people from the older than 65 years old, tourists, what else? Everybody, right? Children. Yes. Everybody is welcome to our house.
But most of them are still high school children, high school students, and also university students.
A lot of them, yes.
And there was also the question, how are Indigenous people involved? That's a very good question. We have had mostly workshops, especially with, I think, 2 or 3 Indigenous groups here in Quito at the house, and we have combined, you know more about it, but I think they have combined their ceremonies, they have their own traditions, and they shared that with us, and of course we shared a little bit our Jewish traditions, and I think you prepared Jewish food for them. So it was not really a peace education for them, but programs for them, but rather workshops, other kinds of workshops.
I may say that Anita had interns that were Indigenous people.
Yes.
Often the help that we get are usually volunteers, but also students that are trying to do, there are several thesis works by Ecuadorian students, and one of them was an Otavalo Indigenous person, I remember that.
She was wonderful. Her name was Lucia Cabascango, and she spoke perfect English.
Yes.
And I think that well, of course.
Quechua, of course.
But I think she was, making all these tours of the house. And I don't know if she guided you, Miriam.
I don't know, yeah, but she always wore her Indigenous clothes, which is wonderful. She was great.
I also see that the question, does Sephardic community still exist?
Yes.
Mm.
Motivated.
I think, you know, well, I think that they are members of the community that are from Sephardic origin, but I think they belong to the community, to
the entire community.
Mm-hmm. And I know there are many people that have kind of lost their roots, but they know they had Sephardic origins, that maybe during the colonial times their great grandparents came here, and they are looking for that and trying to look back in books and everything, but they're not quite members of the Jewish community or haven't made a community here. I know in Loja there's a town, a city in Ecuador, and they still have traditions like the mezuzah or light the candles before Shabbat, but they don't really understand why they are doing this. It's amazing. It's a really interesting story.
Yeah, I think the Kulanu organization that works with emerging Jewish communities worldwide is working with that Ecuadorian community as well. Folks, you've been wonderful for staying with us for an hour and a half on a Sunday afternoon. It's really appreciated. I thank the various families, I've thanked the organizers, but I did not thank all of you who have come and joined us. We will send follow-up information in case you want to learn more, but many thanks. Gracias.
Gracias.
Thank you all. Toda rabah. And I'm sure you're leaving as inspired as I am once again by this phenomenal work in Ecuador. Have a good afternoon. Thanks once more to the Jewish Studies Center for this wonderful session that's been made available to all of us.
Yes,
from the Jewish Studies Center, I want to thank Lucy, Anita, Gaby, Miriam, Askasi. I mean, obviously the work you've done in Quito is marvelous. No question about that. As far as donations are concerned, if you look in the chat box, you'll see a link. And later on, after the recording is ready, and I send an email out about it, the information will be also in that email. So you can then just copy the link if you wish to make a donation for this museum. It's a museum, and it's a Holocaust Memorial. It's a peace facility. It's a great thing in Quito. And let me also say that our next class will be on this Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock. It will be about by the leadership of the Association of Jewish Libraries, and they'll be talking about the various activities that the Jewish Library Association does. Their most famous activity is the Sidney Taylor Award for Jewish Children's Literature every year, and they also give awards for general literature and for academic research. But they have a lot of other activities. So that'll be on Wednesday at 7 o'clock, and you can register at our website. And again, I want to thank everyone involved with the Casa Museum in Quito and all the people who have come to this session. And that's about it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody.
Thank you. And if you have any other questions, you have our email there just in case. And thank you, everybody. It was wonderful.